Rub all over that fish, and you got to rub down on top.
Children painted fish with rubber stencils, made beavers out of rocks, and even threw balls into bins to learn how to recycle at the 14th annual Bear River celebration, which highlights all the things that a healthy watershed provides. Sam Saltern, who played the basketball game, says recycling's important
because if you don't recycle, the whole world would be garbage.
A band played music while children and families were free to walk around to different attractions that were set up at booths. Visitors could get their bags stamped at each place. Whoever went to every station could get a free hat. People from water and wildlife groups came to the event to educate children and families. One of them was Peter Bergeson from Stokes Nature Center, who brought parts of animals for children to touch, such as an antelope horn, an eagle talon, and skin from a snake named Gonzo. Bergeson says he would like to get kids interested enough to one day either become naturalists or to just appreciate nature.
We all need to be stewards of nature, so we need to take care of it, and the best way to take care of it is if you actually learn about it, know about it, start being interested in it, start caring about it.
That's a tortoise eating an apple. People from the Ogden Nature Center, including Shawnee Sawyer, brought him to the event to educate people about tortoises. Sawyer says the more people know about animals like the tortoise, the more desire they'll have to care for them.
I think when it comes to endangered species, people like to think of nice, fluffy, cute things, and you don't really think of a tortoise as something you want to save or protect. But they're really important to the environment and the habitat, so we want to make sure that we protect them, and they're really cool.
More bait? Where's your pole at?
Just off the park by the pond, poles were provided for people to try catching trout as part of the state's Free Fish Day. Robert Holloway sat by the pond with his son Kyle, who was attempting to hook a fish. Robert says he likes that this event caters to families.
I think it's a good activity for families to come out and just to relax and enjoy being together and bonding. And fishing. Yep.
Utah Water Quality Extension Specialist Nancy Messner, who headed the event, says Free Fish Day relates to the Bear River celebration in that the event is a celebration of the watershed, which sustains the fish. With Utah Public Radio News, I'm Christopher Campbell. Workers for DD Towing and Recovery unloaded boxes of ice cream sandwiches from a semi-truck lying upside down in the river, just off the road in Logan Canyon.
If you don't unload the truck, when you stand it up, the roof will cave in and it'll all go down the river.
That's DD's co-owner, Daniel Grange, who also sawed a hole in the middle of the trailer to get more access to the ice cream and make the process go quicker. Though cars were stopped for a minute or two at a time, State Highway Patrol Trooper Phil Rollinson moved them along. He says traffic was more backed up initially,
but now that we've got all the recovery vehicles and stuff in place, we're able to open up traffic and get them moving.
This is the third accident in the Logan Canyon in the last week. Vic Saunders of the Utah Department of Transportation Region 1 office says on Monday a pickup truck carrying a tanker with road oil in it tipped over in the same spot. He says speed is probably the reason for these crashes.
Logan Canyon is a sharp, windy highway. It's not a straight super highway like a lot of people see everywhere else. The Canyon Highway itself, east of the Girls Camp turnoff, is very windy.
Mike Player and Susan Yeary from Vancouver, Canada, who passed the wreck on their motorcycle, say the canyon's windiness is a point of going through it because it's a sightseeing road.
It's not a road to come on here and fly through. It's go slow and enjoy it. It's beautiful. If you want to drive fast, go out to the highway.
Dewey Swallow from West Point, Utah, who also passed the wreck, says these crashes happen because people are in a hurry.
And that's what causes these accidents. Nobody looks around and enjoys the scenery and enjoys the ride. They got to get from point A to point B as fast as they can.
Utah State Highway Patrol Lieutenant Lee Perry says to be safe, people should pay attention to the advisory signs that recommend the speed to go around the curves and not just the official speed limits. With Utah Public Radio News, I'm Christopher Campbell.
When people see bugs, what do they normally say? Yeah, they go, ew, or icky. Okay, but I'm a water quality scientist. Scientists don't say words like ew or icky or nasty. Who can raise their hand and tell me words that scientists say?
USU's Water Quality Extension Programs Director, Brian Green, is teaching elementary school students about insects that live in streams for the first part of their lives and in the air as adults. They're called aquatic macroinvertebrates, and Green says they're biological indicators of clean, healthy water.
Because these macroinvertebrates have to live in the stream 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, they integrate all the stress from the environment. So if the water's too warm, if there's not enough dissolved oxygen, or it's not good habitat, they're not able to survive.
Green says this works better than doing a chemical sample, which only gives a snapshot view on water quality.
These biological indicators, they are integrating the entire stress of the watershed over the entire period of their life cycle.
No, does he bite?
No, he doesn't bite. See how he has the two
Water quality
toes right
extension workers set out water tubs filled with macroinvertebrates and let the children interact with the insects. The students looked at most of the aquatic life through magnifying glasses on petri dishes, but one of the insects was big enough to hold, the juvenile stonefly, which Green says is very sensitive to pollution.
They are kind of like the rock star of the water quality world. You only find these stoneflies in really healthy streams.
Nancy Messner, professor of watershed sciences at USU, says a big part of the water quality extension program is working with children.
We have grown to understand that working with kids has probably some of the biggest impact long term.
The College of Natural Resources has been hosting NR Days for kids for 30 years now, and Messner says she knows the program is effective at teaching children. A graduate student once gave children a pre-test before they attended the event, which evaluated their knowledge and attitude towards water and the outdoors. The students were then tested twice more, once soon after NR Days and once 8 months later. Messner says the results showed a significant increase in both knowledge and attitude.
If you ask them at the beginning, tell me about a river, they'd say, rivers are wet. And if you ask them after this activity, tell me about a river, they will say, rivers are cool places and we need to keep them clean for all the animals that live there. That's a big difference.
Messner says it's important for these kids to understand water quality because we're all responsible for taking care of natural resources.
We have a very limited amount of usable clean water. Once it's contaminated, that's that much less water that we can use. And so whether you like to water ski or irrigate or drink or just play in it, we need to have clean water.
Tim Beach, Programs Assistant at the Water Quality Extension, says he hopes NR Days gives the children a sense of excitement and adventure to get outdoors and learn more about their environment. Reporting for The Source on Utah Public Radio, I'm Christopher Campbell. On Saturday, a 27-year-old man attempted to steal a car from a woman outside a grocery store in Orem. A man with a concealed carry permit saw the confrontation and pointed his gun at the carjacker, who turned around and lunged forward. The gun was fired and the carjacker died. Utah Representative Curtis Oda says the man was justified to pull his gun on the carjacker.
It's the bad guy who causes his own demise. So in other words, if he would have just stopped and run away, that would not have happened. But he lunged for the gun.
Concealed permit instructor Dex Taylor says a stand your ground law in place, which will likely protect the shooter from any criminal charges, is a result of rights granted by the Constitution.
I think the design behind the Constitution, of a free America was written that we have the right to be able to be wherever we are allowed to be, that's agreed by the majority of the people, and that we don't have to run away.
Kristen Rao Finkbeiner, Executive Director of Moms Rising, an advocacy group for mothers and families which has pushed for gun control laws in Utah, says stand your ground laws may not be safe.
Community safety is definitely in question when stand your ground laws exist, and we can see that in the stats. More people die in states with stand your ground laws.
One study done at Texas A&M found that the rate for homicides went up in states with stand your ground laws after they were implemented. Oda says this doesn't necessarily mean the people killed were innocent.
If you, the good guy, has to retreat, well, yeah, there's not going to be a situation where the bad guy might get shot.
Finkbeiner says there are instances where the victims weren't committing a crime. Sometimes they were confused and looking for help.
Renisha McBride was recently shot dead after a car crash that she was in happened just outside of Detroit. She went to somebody's porch for help, knocked on the door, and he shot her dead. A Virginia teen was recently shot after entering the wrong home following a party. And an Alzheimer's patient was recently killed after being mistaken for an intruder.
Taylor says people do make wrong calls, whether they're civilians or law enforcement, which is why final decisions are up to the courts.
That's their job, is to be able to decide, was there an imminent threat? Was it happening immediately? And last but not least, was it deemed reasonable? That's the three answers you need to be able to say yes to if you're going to ever use a firearm and by chance have to use deadly force.
Orem Police Captain Ned Jackson says while the investigation is still going on, the man who shot the carjacker will probably not be charged with anything. With UPR News, I'm Christopher Campbell.
Chicka chicka boom boom. Yeah, look at all the colors.
Amy Heaps is an instructor at Autism Support Services, Education, Research, and Training, or ASSERT, a preschool program that helps children with autism become independent.
Some of our kids, they didn't talk when they came in, but now these kids are talking and they're going out to typically developing kindergartens next year.
Yeah, of course. What's that? Write your name.
Tom Higbee, director of the program, says these children are taught through applied behavior analysis. This means ASSERT workers look at how each child's abilities compare with their typically developing peers. They then create opportunities for these children to develop the skills they need. He says the workers give the children positive reinforcement when they do what they're told.
It's because we use a positive reinforcement-based approach, it makes it really fun for the kids and helps motivate them to be more interested in the social world and to do the things that they'll need to do to be successful in life and in their educational programs.
Higbee says another part of ASSERT is research, and recently the program did a study in which the workers taught children with autism to play hide and seek with their typically developing peers.
And it ended up being a really good program because it helps promote inclusion of kids with disabilities, help promote language and appropriate play.
On August 15th, Race for a Cause will put on the second annual pancake run, in which proceeds will go towards ASSERT. Allie Andrus, one of the race coordinators, says she and her husband Mike started the race because they both have family members who have been diagnosed with autism. She says the purpose of this race is not solely to raise funds by those who enter.
I know last year they got a donation from a pediatrics office just because they heard about it. So we're trying to also bring awareness so that the community knows that it's there and they're welcome to obviously make donations at any time.
Higbee says the Utah legislature just approved of a new clinical building for the Emma Eccles Jones College of Education and Human Services, which will house ASSERT. He says proceeds from the race will go towards buying new supplies, toys, and learning materials for the program, as it prepares to transition into the new facility. More information, including how to enter the race, can be found at upr.org. With Utah Public Radio News, I'm Christopher Campbell. In King v. Burwell, the plaintiff argues that the federal government should not give subsidies to people who buy health insurance in states that do not run their own exchanges. Since Utah doesn't have an exchange, a ruling in favor of the plaintiff would take away the subsidies from Utahns. Ron Pollock, executive director of Families USA, an advocacy group that backs healthcare reform, says the 86,000 Utahns who receive federal subsidies are paying premiums of $89 per month on average, but this could increase to $248 if the subsidies are taken away.
This court case, which should be decided over the next week and a half, could make a huge difference as to whether Utahns can afford health insurance.
But Derek Monson, director of public policy at the Sutherland Institute, a conservative think tank, argues that while parts of the ACA have made premiums more affordable for some, others have to in turn pay more. He says a decision in favor of the plaintiff would give lawmakers an opportunity to repeal certain regulations under the Act.
The reality is that premiums have continued to go up and have gone up most specifically in recent years because of these mandates and these regulations under the ACA. And so if you repealed those, it would lower the health insurance premiums for everybody.
Pollock says because of the subsidies, younger, healthier people have been able to afford insurance. He argues taking subsidies away can lead to a death spiral, where these young people will drop out of insurance.
Insurance pools only get made up of people who are older and sicker, and as that occurs, premiums just keep on escalating and skyrocketing, so that at some point fairly quickly, insurance is unaffordable for virtually everybody.
There is no set date for when the Supreme Court will make a decision. With Utah Public Radio News, I'm Christopher Campbell. Between all 14 resorts in Utah, ski attendance hit 3.95 million skier days this winter, meaning
you get a skier day for every skier that purchases a lift ticket for that day or night and uses it.
That's Ski Utah's communications director, Paul Marshall, who says while that number is down from average, it's only by 4.9%. Overall, he says, it's been a successful year considering the fact that snowfall has only been 41% of the average. In comparison, he says Utah experienced a similar amount of snowfall in 1977, and ski attendance was down by 53% because of inadequate snowmaking equipment.
What to take from this is that in the year when we had a very low, unfortunate snowfall, and that's due to Mother Nature, the mountain's investment in effective, energy-efficient snowmaking paid dividends into keeping skier visits and keeping our $1.3 billion winter industry economy alive.
But what can we expect in the coming years? Utah Climate Center physicist Dr. Robert Davies says this winter has been the warmest on record in the western United States, which is a result of the climate changing. He says that doesn't mean every future winter will be like this, and he compares it to when an unusually large wave hits the shore due to tide.
That doesn't mean that every time a wave comes up on shore it's gonna be the highest that the wave ever hit. It just means that it becomes more likely. So as we move forward, having winters like this become more likely.
Alta Ski Resort Sustainability Coordinator and ecologist Mara Olivos says adaptive management plans for resorts to deal with warmer temperatures are still new for the industry. She says many places, including Alta, don't have a plan, but are in the process of making one. With Utah Public Radio News, I'm Christopher Campbell. Cattle owners washed their cows and sheared them in preparation for the annual Black and White Days Cow Show on Friday, where the cows will be judged on their physical features. Cattle owner John Conrad from Eskdale, Utah, says winning these shows increases the value of the cows and their offspring.
At really good shows, cows that win can be worth in excess of $100,000.
It's not just Utahns who compete in the nationally ranked show. Robert Texera has been coming from California for the last 2 decades. He says the quality of cattle has improved over the years, and he enjoys the competition.
It's just like, playing baseball or whatever. You can get out there, you want to win. And it's the same type of deal in this.
The Cow Show is just one of the events in the week-long Black and White Days, an annual tradition in Richmond, Utah, which is celebrating its 100th year.
Richmond is such a small little town, and for us to have this huge event here and have it be our 100-year anniversary, it's like Super Bowl to us.
That's Cheyenne Andrus, a future Farmers of America member from Skyview High School who competed in a cattle judging contest on Wednesday. Other events will include Governor Herbert speaking on Friday morning and a free movie in the park that evening. On Saturday, there will be a free breakfast, a horse pull, and a 12K that runs up to Cherry Creek Ski Resort.
That's a run. That's definitely not for the faint of heart.
That's Richmond City Council member Jeff Young, who's heading the Black and White Days. He says the tradition started in 1912 because people in Richmond had cattle they wanted to show. After a disease hit, however, they held off for 2 years and started making it an annual tradition in 1915. Now, he says, it's become an important community event.
Every community needs something that can bring the community together, that puts our differences aside and creates a common thing that's for the better good. And that's kind of what Black and White Days is.
Young says the better good he refers to is the memory that the pioneer traditions from the past are still important. With Utah Public Radio News, I'm Christopher Campbell. Alton Coal Development is trying to expand its coal mining tract by about 3,500 acres, where it will run for an additional 25 years. In 2011, the Bureau of Land Management released a draft Environmental Impact Statement, or EIS, to outline how the project would affect the environment, including air quality and noise pollution. Nathaniel Schoaf, staff attorney for the Sierra Club, says after the statement was released, 170,000 people spoke out against the expansion. He attributes a large outcry to the mine's proximity to Bryce Canyon National Park.
If you put a coal mine and you run it 24 hours a day, not only do you have lights and equipment running all that time, but you have particulate matter and other air pollution from blasting and from digging and from wind blowing off your coal piles that all contribute to worsening the views at an iconic national park.
In response to the comments, the BLM later did a supplemental EIS. Schoaf says while agencies often recommend what alternatives should be done, the BLM didn't do that with a supplemental statement. However, he says it is taking more public comments right now before making a final decision. The original 2011 statement suggests the mine will conform to most of the Environmental Protection Agency's standards of air quality and noise level. In addition, there will be land reclamation projects throughout the time it will run. Afterwards, there will be a 10-year reclamation period. Reg Olson, permitting manager of Utah's Division of Air Quality, says while the division hasn't received an application for a permit from Alton Coal Development, the project will need approval in order to continue. Olson says the mine will have to show it complies with legal air quality standards in order to obtain the permit.
The intention is that they would comply with it moving into the future. We obviously can't guarantee that they would, but we have a compliance group that inspects and checks up on sources to make sure that they do in fact comply with the permit.
But one woman, who lives about 20 miles away from the mine on Highway 89 and wishes to remain anonymous, doesn't trust the way Alton Coal has handled things so far, including how wastewater and air quality is monitored and the way it has reclaimed the land.
If they're doing that presently on the mine and not reclaiming the land properly, not treating or respecting the wastewater, etc., what is going to happen when they're in so many thousands of acres of land?
Alton resident Gary Kalpikoff points out that the Intermountain Power Plant, where the coal will be taken, is switching to natural gas soon.
I don't know what these guys are going to do with their coal. To me, I read about coal every day. It's on its way out in this country. Maybe the rest of the world is not, but in this country, coal's taking a hard hit.
Jeffrey Barrett, deputy director of the Utah Governor's Office of Energy Development, says it's fair to say coal production is declining. However, he says there are still markets for coal, and Utah should be focused on opportunities to take part in them.
Just because we may anticipate regional declines in coal-based generation doesn't mean we should necessarily be ramping down coal mining in the state of Utah.
The BLM is taking written comments until August 11th. This week, the Bureau started holding open houses where members of its staff will answer questions about the expansion and about the supplemental EIS. A link to the time and place of these meetings can be found at upr.org. With Utah Public Radio News, I'm Christopher Campbell.